Greetings and welcome again to another session we'll have tonight, praise God, of Talks and Chats. And tonight we're going to be spending some time here with my friend, my buddy, old time armor bearer, Phil Black.
Yes.
Some of you know him. We're tuning in tonight, and I pray that the information that's shared tonight will be helpful as we discuss and have a little chat tonight. As I always say, please share this with those on YouTube, share it with those on Facebook. Our viewing audience has been excited about the times we've been talking, so I pray that you will share it with other people so that this information doesn't just die, that it's good information to get out. Pastor's been teaching us on a series called Check-In, and this is just another time of checking in, man.
Yes.
So I'm thankful and grateful for you that you were willing to come in and sit down and talk with us for this session, and I'll say welcome.
Oh, thank you.
It's been a minute.
Yes, it's been a minute.
It's been a minute.
Yes.
We go back to the 90s a little bit, and
Yes.
actually further than that when
Right.
we were in college.
Right.
I mean, to be honest,
Right.
we were in the same spaces quite a bit there, If you could, for our viewing audience, could you let them know kind of what's your background and where you are kind of at the end and where you are today?
Okay. I am a retired, year and a half retired Cincinnati police officer. Did 33 years of service with Cincinnati Police. And within my 33 years, I spent a number of years in various assignments. I was one of those that I would say my attention span or my boredom was only from 5 to 6 years, then I just get bored and want
Time to move on.
go to a different assignment. I just didn't want to get locked into the traditional patrol car. There's some guys who and girls on the force who wanted to do that's it, just ride around in a police car. I just wasn't one of those. So I was able to explore different assignments.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you had different experiences, different exposure.
Right.
Okay. So what we've been talking about, Pastor, obviously in line with some of the things that have been happening in the communities throughout this country, this whole issue of gun violence, has just really been, I guess it's because it's more visible and just social media and the news. Not that it has not been going on.
Right.
People have been getting shot, and gun violence has been going on for a long time. But these mass shootings, and it looks like the number is 4 and above. Whenever it's 4 and above, they call it a mass shooting.
Right.
And so I mean, when you were on the beat, on the streets, Cincinnati. That's where we're Cincinnati. From your experience, have things changed? Was it just about the same as it is now, or?
With Cincinnati, it has changed greatly. Cincinnati is always, they say, 5 to 10 years behind every other major city as far as stuff happening. The last time I was actually in patrol, I was probably 8 to 10 years ago. Patrolled Avondale, and that was after being off the streets for 22 years, then going back.
Wow.
And getting to know the people. And even then, violence was there, shootings occurred, people getting shot, but there was still a respect for the law enforcement and respect for one another. You're able to talk to just about anyone on the street now, and I can understand with the climate and the stuff that's been going on in the country, people are more reluctant to even have a basic conversation with law enforcement. But as far as the violence, I would say things have gotten worse. And of course, with social media and all, you get to see more of it. Sometimes see it live because people do, the streaming live service. But it's something, because I was having this conversation with a buddy of mine just on what's going on around us.
That's what I want to get there.
And I told him, I said, man, we living in trying times. I mean, and it was, and you had mentioned about pastors, the series he's preaching on, and I got to think like, wow, because this was a buddy I hadn't talked to in a while.
Okay.
And I just reached out, hey, I just want to see how you doing.
Check in.
Just checking in, and we got to, talking about the current issues, and it's sad. It's almost to the point of, I don't want to say scary, but it makes you look over your shoulders. Being aware of your surroundings, where you're going, and years ago it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that.
Well, I was thinking about it too from even from a law enforcement. You having 33 years, say someone has about the same or less. It's what they've been exposed to. Say you're exposed to something in the late 80s, early 90s. Now the 2000s, 215, 218, it's like, okay, things have changed.
Oh yes,
right?
Yes.
And it's like, how the temperament or the how does a law enforcement person feel when they're out on the street? Now I'm like, okay, it's different than when I was out on the street in the 90s or the 80s. What's the what did you get from maybe others, your peer group?
For one thing, when I was on the streets, even in my early years when I patrolled the West End, you didn't think about the dangers of the job. It was just coming to work. I was in my 20s, and hey, I'm making some good money. Just 8 hours of being in people's business.
Right.
You didn't think about the danger. Now, fast forward to the 2000s, and even when I had went back to patrol and patrolled Avondale, and had been off the streets for 20 plus years. At that time, I still had that same mentality where, my interaction with people didn't change, but now knowing that, okay, you're almost dealing with a different type of climate.
Okay.
So you can't, those things that you learned that you never was exposed to as far as keeping your guards up or keeping your head on a swivel. That's what we used to always say. And really, at that time, being a senior, the senior patrol officer in District 4, which was the district in Avondale, had to let the officers know that you have to treat people like human beings, because you're not, my early years, hey, stop, people stopped. Put that down, people did it. Now it's like, what? It's more of a challenging, so you have to really use your thinking on and how you would, and I would tell them when I taught at the police academy, treat people the way you want your mama treated. And and I would get those looks like, oh, okay. I said, yeah, because
they're bad people though.
And they would, I said, but you don't know what's the underlying reason for that person coming off at you a certain way, or they may have witnessed something. Now they're so filled with emotions and don't know how to release it. Now you come along and you want to add to that. Now you probably have a fight going on, and something worse than that can happen.
It just blows up.
So yes, all the things that have occurred in this country in the last couple of years has added to. And one of my assignments with the police department, I was a recruiter.
Okay.
I did that for 5 years, and law enforcement, everyone wanted to be the police. It was a secure job, benefits, and the only thing you had to do was sell the city. I used to sell Cincinnati before I even talked about a career in law enforcement. Well, fast forward to now, you have agencies are really competing against one another just to get police officers, because it's not the job of choice. It isn't attractive. I was talking to a firefighter buddy of mine Friday, actually, and we was joking about that. People love the firemen, love them, and they have no issue with recruitment. Yeah. So the danger is there on both ends, and when I came on the department, they teach you how to almost a social worker type, you know. Families get to know you. Now you're that person they would call, not because some crime was committed, but I need you to talk to my son. I need you to talk to my husband. So you became that. So now it's to the point where that has to come back, and it's coming back in order for officers to understand and the climate, the trauma that young people are going through at such a young age. You know, the stress, and it's trying times. Yeah.
So when you are, you know, in the streets, and you know, you really more, I know they had this thing about relationships, you know, it's like community policing, you know, so you have folks who are in the community, they know, they get familiar, they start to know the people, blah, 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 right? And I know they went there. I don't know if that was the latter part or if it was always that way.
It was always that way, but it's come down to the officer that really buy into the concept. It made my job easier. I mean, even now being retired and run into people that knew me as a police, and, you know, now I got, you know, this big great beard. And wow, and they get to telling stories. You may not remember me, man. Remember I was 5 years old. I'm like, wow. You know, if I would have did something to traumatize that 5-year-old, now you have this grown adult male that remembered me before I remembered him.
Got it.
You know, so, but community policing is important, because if you don't have the community policing and you're not interacting with the community in a respectful way, when you need something, some information or a favor, they're just going to turn it back and keep walking the opposite direction.
You want to ask some questions.
Right.
Like,
yeah, I mean, that was one thing when I worked in the West End. You know, I was taught in my early years, it may be that person walking across the street that's not in law enforcement that may be the first person to come to your aid. And that really played up, I can't remember what year it was, but I was in a bad accident, my partner and I, at the intersection of Central Parkway and Liberty. I mean, it was bad. They actually rushed me to the hospital in an ambulance. But the first person that came to our car was, and I cannot remember the brother's name, but we called him Worthy, after James Worthy, because he looked like James Worthy and he always wore a Lakers jersey. First person that came to the car to, you know, get us some help. And if we would have treated that man in a negative way or disrespectful way, he'd have probably looked in the car, oh man, that's bad, and kept on walking. So you really have to get, especially now in the community, on your side. It's a little bit difficult now because of the climate across the country, but I always tell officers, especially younger officers, you have to do it on your individual way. Let them get to know you outside of the uniform. You know, just like if, you know, growing up and you may be at a grocery store or a store and you see your school teacher, and the first thing you think, like, what you doing here? You know, because they think the same thing with us. So you got to get them to see you on that side.
you know, with all this that's going on in the country, and it's, you know, the climate is just such, it's so tense. It's so tense, you know, and then people are beginning to get scared. You know, I got some family members who are saying, oh, I got to make sure I keep my gun with me and all this, because, like, you never know. I mean, who knew you'd get shot going grocery shopping,
right?
You know, or anything like that. So, you know, I was thinking about changing how things have shifted, you know, but have they really shifted? I'm thinking they have. They have, you know, whether it's in the political system, it's government, it's, you know, whatever. There's changes that's going on, but there's also changes in the community, people, you know. So you were talking about causing someone trauma. Well, I might come from trauma already, you know. But it's this thing about these guns, you know, and I know it's a touchy subject, so to speak, but in reality, it's like, it is what it is, because people aren't getting shot with bow and arrows. They're getting shot with guns, you know.
Well, you know, we live in a country that's always had this fascination with firearms. And now with laws being changed here in Ohio. Matter of fact, effective this month of June, you don't have to have a permit to conceal carry. So
Really?
yeah, and I've had people ask me, so what do you think about it? I said, well, I mean, yeah, you have the right to carry, but now you really have to think everybody you come in contact with may have a gun. And well, why you say that? I said, well, that would stop you now from getting into a verbal altercation because Ohio has the stand your ground. You don't have to flee. And so even if you feel threatened, a John Q. citizen, you can use, if you feel like, hey, this person's bigger than me, they can hurt me, I don't have to run, I'm gonna pull my gun out. So I even tell family members and especially some of the young people I know, don't get into that argument. It's cool to just walk away. You might look over your shoulder, but just don't even get in an argument. And I think about, I carry or I have a firearm with me now more than I did when I was working. And I'm like, wow, but now I was like, okay, certain places I just don't even go, just to alleviate, that. But, we're in the times that guns are, people are fascinated with guns. Laws are changing to make the accessibility more. Just recently, I think Friday, it passed in the Ohio State House as far as allowing school districts to allow staff to be armed. And, that's coming from 33 years of law enforcement. I'm like, ooh, that can go south real quick.
And stand your ground. And I mean, there's a lot of things coming together
and it comes
here.
not just, I've had people ask me, as far as guns, how you feel about it? I said, 33 years, I'm not a big gun buff. Yes, I do own firearms, only the ones that I had in my years on the job, but I'm not a big gun buff. I said, there's a couple of questions you really have to ask yourself. One, are you willing to take someone's life without hesitation? And two, do you know how to clear the gun when it jams? I said, if you have to think about those, man, I wouldn't, don't even bother, because it's not a toy.
Right.
And I think just popped in my head with the young people, either losing their life to gun violence or being a victim of gun violence, view it as something before that happened, as far as, I play the video games, I watch it on TV, but then, I've never been shot, but I've transported tons of victims and a few young people, and I would ask them, how's it feel? Oh man, it's running. Didn't think it was gonna be like this. I'm like, well, I mean, that's something.
Play bullets or
something. I can remember telling a young man that, that's something you shouldn't have wanted to experience. And he didn't get shot from anyone. He was messing around with a gun, ended up shooting himself in the calf. And it's not something that you would want to have as a badge of honor. Unfortunately, I've also come across those who wear it as a badge of honor. It's glorified in movies, it's glorified in music. Some people figure if I've been shot and if I play it up, then that gives me this additional street cred.
I am something.
Yeah.
I'm somebody.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I'm thinking about these individuals who are, doing these mass shootings, and it's young people, and it seems like young people are doing a lot of shooting. Obviously it's happening in the street, 101, 102, things like that. But this mass shooting of going into establishments, and back in the day, folks used to say going postal.
Right.
And it's like, don't do somebody wrong, they may come back, and get you, whatever. It's, was there a point where, I don't know if you experienced the mass shootings yourself through your period of time, but what did you ever see any triggers, that cause
In my actually, I haven't experienced any mass shootings. When we had the one here down at the Fifth Third Bank building, I was actually wasn't in town, so I found about it from the news and people, send me messages. Hey, did you hear about this? But just some of the officers that I personally know that responded to the scene, and especially the officer that had stopped the threat. Just talking to them, like, what was your experience? And it shook them up. Although, you become a police officer, you don't think about, well, I may get in a gunfight one day. Just like if you join the military and there's no war, you don't think about, I may end up going to some war. So his whole deal was just, he resorted to his training, but it was like, just a nervousness. And this was months after it happened. And the counseling that he was still going through, he said, hey, every time he closed his eyes, he was reliving that situation. So there's trauma all the way around. And I mentioned earlier about the trauma of the young people. And, when we were growing up, there was a lot of stuff we didn't worry about. One big thing, we didn't worry about drinking out of a water spigot off of somebody's house out the water hose. Well, now it's, kind of make light of that, but young people got to go through a whole lot, and then to have the guns. I spent a good portion of my career in our youth services, where I was a school resource officer. So we trained active shooter training, just like we did with fire drills. And, how to, and I used to tell at one particular school, I won't mention school, but I don't think they took it serious. And I used to tell the administration, unfortunately, it's not if it's gonna happen, it's when it's gonna happen. And I had a principal tell me, you scaring my staff. I said, well, they need to be scared. I said, this is real. This is real. And
no matter where you are.
No matter where you are.
Suburbs, inner city, it doesn't matter.
And it gets it was getting routine that, and I used to tell them, hey, you may have a student that have graduated 10 years ago and remember exactly how the routine went. That might be the one to come up in here, But, you hear that it may have been some type of mental situation going on with the shooter. Something, if you look at it, no real sane person is just gonna wake up, let me go do this today. You really have to be
thoughtful.
Yeah, to just not value life. But once again, we are living in those times where preparation for the unexpected is most important. Schools, everywhere, churches, grocery stores, malls. And it's with me, from law enforcement all those years, I see things different in someone that's maybe yourself, not in law enforcement. We can be in the same establishment, the same shopping mall. I may look at someone and say, and where you like, well, what do you mean? What do you see? Get that. And that's just years of training. And I mention that because, now with the state is leaning towards allowing staff and faculty of schools to be armed. 24 hours of training or just going to a target range, shooting at a steel target, it's not going to prepare you if you don't have a history already of that. Because even when I was working and we would go through the active shooter drills just with our unit, and they're using dissemination or blanks, just the sound, you still, and it's just a blank, but that gut feeling, that adrenaline, because it sounds like, and you're in the mode of training, but on the other side that they're just shooting blanks, that's the type of training that, and even going through that, That was officers that had trauma just through the training that left the unit. Like, I can't deal with this possibility, So it's just one of those, I told someone the other day, you just got to stay prayed up, man.
Amen.
I said, I prayed when I left put the uniform on when I was leaving my house, going to work, on the way to work, once I was there, and then, okay, now let me go out in the field. Even when I was a detective for 20 plus years, prayed in, because you never know when you have to go out, and you just don't know. And it's to the point now that not just with police, but ordinary citizens, you leave your house at this moment and pray that you return in the same way you left. It's just and not to scare, not to put the fear in people, but just have to be aware of your surroundings.
When you think about the guns that are on the street, they said, I think Pastor even used a quote like 350 million guns or more. I think it's 400 million. So it's like more guns than people.
Yeah.
I may have 4 guns, you may have 10, some people have none,
Right.
But to be on the street and know that, are people getting guns, they're all buying them legal? I don't believe that.
No, you're right to,
right?
yeah.
So the guns that are being used, now you hear these mass shootings, it appears that these folks have gotten their guns from, a store, it's like it's a legal weapon. It was in their possession, or it's their parents or something, they took it, and, but I'm like, but what about the others, it's because it's so much, if it's that many on the streets, and now you get these laws that are changing, like, does it matter that, I have a gun and it's not registered,
Right.
Versus you have a gun and it's registered, you got a gun, I got a gun,
Right. And there are a lot of guns out on the streets. And as you mentioned, with the laws changing, there are going to be even more guns. There are people that, gun collections is a hobby.
Yeah.
Some people collect cars or playing cards or, the sports athletic cards. But there are a lot of people who collect guns. And then there's some who are just fascinated with, because when you have a gun, you have a sense of power. And if you are not skilled or trained or respect the firearm, then you become reckless. Now you're a reckless person with something that can take a life. And that's dangerous right there. But yes, there are a lot of guns. Like you said, more guns than people in this country. But someone, I was looking at the news and reading the news, and they were saying how other countries have guns and gun regulations, but they don't have as many shootings or mass shootings as this country here. And of course, you always probably hear the Second Amendment, they taking our rights away. It's not that easy for them to take an amendment, a constitutional right away. It's definitely not that easy. But that's used, and since that's been, and all these mass shootings been going on, I can almost guarantee that the sales of those type of weapons have gone up. It's the supply and demand. Anyone that owns any type of gun store, they're gonna capitalize on it. That the fear of, hey, they're gonna take this gun away, I got these on sale, and that's just putting more guns in the street. And sometimes they do wind up in the wrong hands.
When you, I got 2 things I want to hit. When you did detective, and I assume you've had times where you've talked to people and you've asked questions and so forth. If you ever talked to a shooter, and mindset, thoughts, what's caused, is it just all retaliation, or is just, hey, that's just what I'm into?
Well, when I was a detective, I did one assignment. I was a fraud detective, so anything dealing with money and bank robberies, money laundering, and stuff like that. Then the other ones, I was a sexual assault detective. So I never, and I had to think, I never talked to, as far as a detective interviewing or interrogating someone that used a gun, but I do recall a young man that was involved in the shooting that I had to transport to the jail, and he was just talking. I remember asking him, so how did that make you feel? And the guilt, he was. I'm feeling bad, man. I can't believe I did that. And his exact words was, "I got wrapped up in the moment." And I'm like, well, then you think about prior to what you were carrying could do. Nah, I didn't think about it, you know. So
Situation.
right,
And I'm there.
right. Right. So, but and I'm sure there are those who, like I stated before, where law enforcement get remorseful. Then maybe some citizens that may feel that way. And then on the flip side, there may be some who shoot someone who, oh well, you know.
So the other part was, with all of this that's happening, there's the camp of, well, it's people with mental health. Is it really? Is that what's on the street?
With me, when I hear that, and you'll hear the term, oh, they must have been crazy, and I'm like, unless someone has prior knowledge, personally me, is why would you put that label? Just, yes, they went out and did this mass shooting, and first thing you would think, like, okay, no sane person would do that. But that could be a person just mad. Getting mad at someone, well, I'm going to teach you, and they so wrapped up in the heat of the moment. But most of the mass shootings are planned out.
Got it.
They have a plan. Some plans don't go well, and, some surrender, but they just get so wrapped up. And I always steer away of labeling someone with a mental illness, especially, it may be it hasn't been diagnosed, or it may have, and, people don't want to talk about that. That's the thing people don't want to talk about.
Yeah, that's the over there.
Yeah.
Over there stuff.
Right.
Well, we're kind of coming to the end, and I want you to kind of talk to our people, man. There's a lot of folks on here that tune in, and whether they catch it live or catch it on replay. But from your experience in this area of gun violence, is there something that you would recommend or suggest that folks like me or anyone listening could do, and just from your heart, share?
Well, I would never tell anyone that not to have a gun if that's what they choose. I mean, the law says that. But I would say, if you want to have a firearm, make sure you are trained proficiently, not just going through a 24-hour course, taking the gun apart, cleaning it, because, being familiar with it, but most importantly, respecting the power that the gun and what guns are designed to do. I think a lot of people just don't think about, this is a life-taking instrument. They don't think of, oh, this is a nice gun, it looks good, it's shiny, oh, look, oh, it's heavy, and he posing. But respect it. And if you know someone, now it's on that, if you see something, tell someone. And that's important, especially young people. If you hear someone talking about what they're going to do as far as causing mass violence at your school, and it don't have to be a gun, it could be any type of weapon, tell someone. Tell your parents. And hopefully they would tell, someone whether it's on the job or at a school. Don't say, oh, they're not serious, because you don't know. A lot of it is just people are angry, people are believing some of the myths out there, and thinking that, okay, this is what's going on in the country, I better arm myself. And, do some research. You're going to hear a lot of stuff, whether it's on radio or TV or social media. Research for yourself. Don't just believe what you hear as far as, I've had people tell me, are you getting ready for the Civil War? I'm like, Civil War, man? I'm missing something. It's like, no, I'm not preparing for that. We have a big military, so, okay. But I would tell people I'm not going to tell you not to have a firearm, but I would tell you to respect it. They're not toys, and to become proficient with it. And don't just leave it around, because you don't want a small child, because they look at it as a toy, because it may look like something that they were playing with. And you don't want an accident to occur, and now you dealing with that for the rest of your life. Yeah.
It's interesting, man. I really appreciate you just
sharing,
really sharing. And, so many folks are dealing with so many issues, and, not just guns, they're dealing with all kinds of other things. And it's like it exacerbates or it increases and it, turns into something. And I'm believing that God is kind of turning things around. There's a shifting that's going on. And so we have to be on our face. We got to pray. We really got to pray for our families, pray covering, pray safety, because these are times. These times we live in are, it's like the worst of times and the best of times. Some people are blessed, and we're incredibly blessed people, so many good things are happening, but at the same time, there's some really bad stuff that's happening. So when you said be on a swivel, not that you're just walking around afraid, pay attention, be mindful of what's going on. So I pray this was helpful for you. I pray that someone will understand what has been shared and get something from our time here with Phil Black. And again, I thank you for coming.
Well, thanks for having me.
Those of you who are tuned in, next time we get together. Peace. Shalom. The sign on the streets